And then you can go ahead and proceed with your presentation. Mr. Gordy, you are now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Is this on? There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. I am Luke Gordy, Executive Director of Arkansas for Education Reform Foundation, and also another organization, Arkansas for Better Schools. And I'd like to first give you a kind of a Reader's Digest version of how I got into this crazy education business in the first place. I was a banker for 22 years, and in 1988 I received a telephone call from Governor Jim Guy Tucker and asked me if I would consider serving on the State Board of Education. And at the time I told him, I said, I know absolutely nothing about that. And he said, well, I can tell you this. He said, it isn't one of those knife and fork boards where you come and eat lunch once a month. He said, it's a heck of a lot of work. And he wasn't kidding. So I became a member of the State Board of Education, served a 6-year term, and a 3-year term, and then was reappointed for another 6 years by Governor Huckabee. I served 2 terms as chairman. During the Lakeview issues, I had to testify before the federal court during the Lakeview trial, which was fascinating and intimidating experience for me. But so I spent 9 years on the State Board of Education. When my term expired, I received a telephone call from Mr. Jim Walton asking me if I would be willing to spend full time working on education reform issues. And I said, absolutely, that's what I want to do, because as challenging and as frustrating and as demanding as my state board service was, it was still the most important and exciting thing I ever had an opportunity to do. So I was thrilled to have the chance to continue to work in education reform issues. My bosses are Jim Walton, Walter Husband, Claiborne Deming of Murphy Oil, and Bill Dillard of Dillard's. 4 really outstanding people, influential business people who are passionate about education reform. And when we started, we had a 3-legged stool of approaching education reform: more accountability, more transparency, and more choice in public education. And that continues to be our primary focus. And Arkansas has done a remarkably good job on accountability, holding this system accountable for the results it's producing. Previous to Act 35, I didn't feel like Arkansas was doing that. When Act 35 was passed, it literally became a model for the rest of the nation as far as what should happen in holding the system accountable for the results it's producing. The transparency issue, we started, I think we had a great idea in regard to the school report card. It has become almost non-transparent because it's become so cumbersome now with all the additional information that's been added to it, but the idea of it was good. The choice issue is the issue that we feel like still hadn't been addressed effectively or appropriately enough. And let me explain to you why we feel that way. I guess you could boil down our work into one sentence, and it is that every child, we feel like every child, regardless of their zip code, their parents' financial situation, or the color of their skin, should have an outstanding opportunity to get the best education possible. Every child. And this is not an attack on traditional public schools. We better have great traditional public schools, because 99% of the kids are going to continue to be educated in traditional public schools. But I ask people, and I want to ask you to do this, to look at this choice issue not as a legislator, although you have to do that. I want you to look at it as a mama or a daddy or a grandpa or a grandma. And you have a child. It's not just a number in a population ADM in some school district. It's your child. It's your daughter. It's your son. And that child may be in an outstanding traditional public school system, but for whatever reason, they're not being adequately served. They may have special needs that school can't provide for them. They might not function well in a traditional school environment. There may be a broad cross-section of reasons why that child's not functioning well in that school. Now, you're the mama or you're the grandparent. why shouldn't you have the right and the option to send that child to a district to where they will get the best possible education for them? One size doesn't fit all. And that's why we are so committed and passionate to choice generally. And it's also why we're committed and passionate to charter schools, open enrollment public charter schools. As most of you know, charter schools are public schools when they're approved by the State Board of Education. But and again, this is not an attack on the traditional public school system. It's to provide options for parents that need options. To give you an idea of in Little Rock as an example, there's some terrific traditional public schools in Little Rock, and there's some pretty struggling public schools in Little Rock as well, as there are across the state. Excellent schools, some struggling schools. We were very involved in starting East End public charter schools here in Little Rock. East End public charter schools today has over 4,000 people, parents, mamas and daddies and babies, on the waiting list trying to get into East End. 4,000. And other charter schools across Little Rock and across the state have waiting lists too, but I think East End probably has the highest waiting list, although I'm not sure about that. But people want options for their children. And I don't think it's just an obligation. I think it's a moral responsibility for us as educators and as parents and as citizens to provide those options for those people. And again, this is not an attack on the traditional public school system. We have to have outstanding traditional public schools. We also are supporting a open inter-district school choice legislation this term, which means basically we already have a choice law in Arkansas, but it had a race provision. And the Supreme Court in Washington ruled that the race provision could not be, it's unconstitutional. So there was a lawsuit in Malvern, as many of you all know. And the judge there in Malvern just said, we're going to stop choice. And there was a huge uproar about eliminating choice because there's over, I think, 13 or 14,000 kids in the choice pipeline, choice into other districts now. So he rescinded that order, and it was advanced to the 8th Circuit for a decision. So Arkansas already has a choice law.
One of the things that has been brought to my attention about your particular group, the one with the $20 million contract, which one is that?
I don't know anybody with a $20 million contract.
So, whatever it is, you have, what's the name of your organization? The one that goes into various places and helps kids get on track and all of that. Are you not a part of that organization? You don't have any contract with the state of Arkansas?
I have no contract with the state of Arkansas, no ma'am.
All right, let me move on. Because one of the things that I heard...
Are you talking about A+ Arkansas?
Yes, I am.
She's talking about his wife.
I think so.
Well, A+ Arkansas, it was a group of business and community leaders that went around the state to advance choice and talk about the importance of choice in Arkansas. I'm not sure.
That's not the one I'm talking about. Never mind, I'll find out what I'm talking about and get back to you. Because you're involved in a number of things, and I had understood that you were providing some tutoring and stuff to kids in Helena, West Helena.
Oh, no, I know what you're talking about now. No, that's my wife's business.
Oh, that's your wife's
Yes,
business.
ma'am.
Okay.
That's E2E, elbow-to-elbow educational consulting.
Right, that's the one that I had heard the concern that there were not very many minorities that were hired to do that. Could you tell me the number of minorities that are working with your wife's program?
I don't know if there are any minorities working with her program. I don't, not that I know of.
Okay, so we're not going to hold you responsible for your wife's business, but it was a concern that had come to my attention, was the homogeneity of the staff that works with the program. But let me get to something that you were talking about, and that's the open inter-district choice.
Yes, ma'am.
And having come out of segregated schools, what is your concern about the resegregation of schools in Arkansas?
Well, I would be concerned about that. Judge Brian Miller said something that was the most powerful thing I've heard in the whole argument and discussion about, quote, resegregating schools. It was the first day, last 5 minutes of the first day of the Little Rock challenge to charters in Little Rock. And Judge Miller, federal judge, Brian Miller, black judge from Helena, said, he said, I have to take, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'm pretty close to quoting him directly. He said, I have to take this case from where it is right now, not where I wish it was. He said, that's what I'm going to do. But he said, I'm going to tell this audience today. I'm a black man. I have a black son, elementary student, I think he said elementary student, that goes to the public schools. And he said, I want all of you to know that I don't think my black son has to sit next to a white child in order to get an outstanding education. And that was powerful to me. Extremely powerful. Because it just made sense. Here's why. I think some people use the segregation, you've asked me, so I'm going to tell you. I think some people use the segregation argument as a de facto excuse that really is the most racist argument you can have, because they're saying, well, if it's a majority of black children, they just can't learn. Now, I've heard
that's
that.
That's not my point at all, Luke.
Well, you've asked me, so that's
Go ahead,
what I'm...
give me yours.
Well, that's my point. And I think that is just absolutely dead wrong.
Oh, I agree with you on that, Luke. That's not what I'm talking about when I say resegregating schools. I went to all black schools.
Yes, ma'am.
From elementary school to high school. And when I graduated, went to Hendrix College, where I was in a distinct minority. But that's not the problem. Many times where the school or the makeup of the school determines the outside funding for the school. It's not about me having to be in school with white children to learn. I learned exceptionally well in all black schools, as did many of my cohorts who went to school, got a great education, very productive citizens. So I don't believe that I've got to be in a classroom with a white person in order to learn. But I do know that money flows where money is. And there's not a lot of money in the black community. And when you resegregate schools, school money tends to flow where white children are, not where black children are. That's my concern. There will be minimum foundation funding that will be equal or equitable. We'll lace that up with some extra money for English limited learners, and we'll do all that other stuff. But at the end of the day, mom and pop who have some money can buy the playground equipment that unequalizes stuff. Mom and dad can buy the extra material that unequalizes stuff. So I'm saying to you, my concern about desegregation or resegregation of schools is not one that's predicated on the idea that black children can learn.
Well, I didn't say you thought that. I've heard that from...
That's not where I'm coming from at all. Because I know better because I was a black child at a black school. But I also know that my textbooks were 5 years old. I also know that the equipment in my school was not as good as the equipment across town. The thing that equalized it were great teachers.
Right.
And so I understand that, but what I'm saying to you is I am concerned about the resegregation of schools in the state because we seem to be retrogressing to some extent as we go about this business. So I would just share that with you, and if you don't find that to be a problem, that's fine. But when we're talking about separate and equal, it's never been equal. And that's what we're talking about moving back to, is a time when we have separate education, and separate has never been equal. That's my problem with it.
And that would be a huge problem for me too if I thought that was going to happen. Can I ask you one thing, Senator, on that same thing?
You certainly may.
Thank you. I grew up in the 50s, 40s, 50s. I'm older than you are.
You're the only one.